The discovery Olivia Bennet hummed softly as she vacuumed the interior of Julian's Mercedes. Tomorrow was his biggest presentation of the quarter, and she wanted everything perfect for him. After 12 years of marriage, these small acts of support had become second nature. Julian had been working tirelessly on the Westbrook development project, often coming home well after midnight, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Just a few more weeks of these crazy hours, he'd promised last night, kissing her forehead before collapsing into bed. Then we'll take that trip to Barcelona we've been talking about. She smiled at the thought as she ran the handheld vacuum along the passenger seat crevice. The nozzle caught on something, making an unpleasant rattling sound. Olivia switched off the device and reached between the seat and center console. Her fingers closed around something small and hard. When she pulled it out, her breath caught. A teardrop-shaped diamond earring glittered in her palm, catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the garage windows. "That's not mine," she whispered to the empty car. Olivia owned several pairs of earrings, but nothing like this. An intricate platinum setting with a diamond that had to be at least 2 carats. She turned it over carefully, noting the designer mark on the back. Tiffany & Co. definitely not within their budget, even with Julian's recent promotion. She sat in the driver's seat, the earring burning in her palm like a hot coal. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps a client had dropped it? But Julian rarely brought clients in his personal vehicle. The company provided cars for that purpose. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "Stuck in another late meeting. Don't wait up, love you." Olivia stared at the message, then back at the earring. A memory surfaced from last week's company party, the only corporate event she'd attended in months. Julian's new marketing director, Vanessa Winters, wearing what looked like diamond teardrop earrings as she leaned close to Julian, laughing at something he'd said. "No," Olivia said aloud, shaking her head. Julian wouldn't. They had built a life together. They were trying for a baby. They had plans. She slipped the earring into her pocket and finished cleaning the car methodically, her mind racing through recent months. The late meetings, the weekend work sessions, the company trips that suddenly couldn't accommodate spouses, his newfound attention to his appearance, the expensive haircuts, the designer shirts, the cologne he'd never worn before. Later that evening, Olivia sat at their kitchen table, the earring placed before her like evidence in a trial. She'd checked Julian's expense reports left carelessly on his desk. 3 dinners at Maison Rouge, a restaurant they'd deemed too expensive for their anniversary. None of these meals appeared on their shared credit card statements. When her phone rang, she jumped. Julian's smiling face lit up the screen. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, background noise suggesting he was indeed at a restaurant. "The meeting's running late. Westbrook is being difficult about the zoning requirements." "That's too bad," Olivia replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "Anything I can do to help?" "Just having your support means everything," Julian said, his voice dropping. "I've got to run. Vanessa just got the preliminary approval documents we've been waiting for." Olivia's heart stuttered. "Vanessa is there? I thought this was with the Westbrook executives." A brief pause. "Oh yes, the whole team is here. It's all hands on deck for this one." After they hung up, Olivia placed the earring in a small jewelry box and tucked it into her drawer. She wasn't ready for confrontation, not yet. First, she needed to be certain. She opened her laptop and typed Vanessa Winters into the search bar. Tomorrow, she would begin piecing together what her heart already suspected was a truth that would shatter their carefully constructed life. The investigation. For 2 weeks, Olivia moved through her days like a detective, cataloging Julian's behaviors with clinical precision. The diamond earring remained hidden in her jewelry box, a secret she kept even from her sister Caroline, who had called twice sensing something was wrong. "I'm just tired," Olivia had lied, staring at Julian's side of the closet where she'd noticed 3 new dress shirts with the tags still attached. The Westbrook project had officially concluded last Thursday, celebrated with a team dinner Julian had attended. Yet his late nights continued, always with the same rehearsed excuses. Tonight, he'd texted he was caught in strategy sessions, but his location on their shared phone app showed him at the Harborside district, nowhere near his office. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, Olivia made a calculated decision. She drove to Julian's office building, not to confront him, but to have lunch with her old college friend Dominic, who worked in the same complex. As they sat in the lobby cafe, her eyes continually drifted to the entrance. "You seem distracted," Dominic noted, following her gaze. "Just wondering if I might bump into Julian," she said casually. Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Unlikely. I saw him and Vanessa Winters leaving together about an hour ago. They've been inseparable since she transferred from the Chicago office." Olivia's fork clattered against her plate. "What do you mean, inseparable?" "Just office gossip," Dominic backtracked, suddenly uncomfortable. "They work closely on the Westbrook project. That's all I meant." But his eyes told a different story. After lunch, instead of going home, Olivia drove to Maison Rouge. The restaurant was nearly empty at 2 p.m., and the maitre d' greeted her warmly. "I believe my husband has a reservation tonight," she said smoothly. "Julian Bennett? I wanted to make sure they have our preferred table by the window." The maitre d' checked his tablet. "Yes, Mrs. Bennett. Mr. Bennett has reserved the private dining alcove for 7 p.m. for 2 people. Olivia's smile never faltered. "Perfect. Thank you." That afternoon, she accessed their shared cloud storage to search for the photos from the company holiday party. In the background of one image, she spotted Vanessa, stunning in a red dress, wearing both diamond earrings, identical to the one hidden in Olivia's drawer. At 6:30 p.m., Olivia parked across from Maison Rouge, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She had told herself she only needed confirmation, but seeing Julian arrive, looking more polished than he had for their own dates in months, made her stomach clench. 20 minutes later, Vanessa arrived. Even from a distance, Olivia could see she wore only one diamond earring. Olivia didn't stay to watch them enter together. She had seen enough. The next day, while Julian was supposedly at a construction site inspection, Olivia called his assistant. "Rebecca, I need to send something important to Vanessa Winters." "But I've misplaced her contact information," Olivia explained. Rebecca hesitated. "I should probably have Mr. Bennett forward that." "It's a surprise," Olivia improvised, "for the successful Westbrook project." Minutes later, Olivia had Vanessa's address, email, and phone number. She also learned that Julian and Vanessa had traveled together to 3 client meetings in Chicago over the past 2 months. Trips Julian had described to her as solo ventures. That evening, Olivia created a fake social media account and found Vanessa's profile. It was mostly professional posts, except for vague captions about new beginnings and unexpected happiness paired with sunset photos. In one image from 6 weeks ago, a man's hand was visible, wearing a watch Olivia had given Julian for their 10th anniversary. When Julian arrived home that night, Olivia was waiting in the kitchen, a glass of wine in hand, her expression carefully neutral. "You're still up," he said, loosening his tie. "Everything okay?" Olivia smiled tightly. "Just wondering about your day. How was the site inspection?" Julian launched into a detailed explanation about foundation issues and permit delays. His confidence was almost impressive. He'd always been persuasive, a trait that had served him well in real estate development. "Sounds exhausting," she commented. "You must be hungry. I noticed you didn't use the company card for lunch. A flicker of something. Surprise? Concern?" Crossed his face before he composed himself. "We went to that little deli. I paid cash." Olivia nodded, noting the lie in her mental ledger. According to his assistant, Julian and Vanessa had expense-reported lunch at La Terrasse. "I'm thinking of calling Vanessa," Olivia said casually, watching him over the rim of her glass, "to thank her for all her work on Westbrook. You two have been putting in so many hours together." Julian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's thoughtful but unnecessary. The whole team contributed." "Still," Olivia pressed, "you've mentioned how instrumental she's been. I feel like I know her already." Julian changed the subject, but Olivia had seen what she needed to, the flash of panic in his eyes. The investigation was complete. She had all the evidence she required. Tomorrow would be the confrontation she'd been methodically preparing for. Olivia placed her empty wine glass in the sink and followed Julian upstairs, rehearsing the words she would use to dismantle the lie their marriage had become. The confrontation, Olivia chose the Bennett and Associates annual charity gala for her confrontation, a calculated decision that provided both public protection and private humiliation. She dressed with unusual care, a sleek black gown that had hung unworn in her closet for 2 years. Waiting for a special occasion? You look incredible, Julian said, his eyes appreciative as they prepared to leave. What's the occasion? Olivia fastened her necklace. Sometimes a woman likes to remind her husband what he has at home. At the gala, she watched Julian and Vanessa perform an elaborate dance of professional distance, their careful avoidance of each other almost more damning than any public display would have been. Vanessa wore emerald earrings tonight, both of them, Olivia noted with grim satisfaction. During dinner, Olivia excused herself and headed not to the restroom, but to the terrace where Vanessa stood alone. Nursing a champagne flute. Beautiful evening, Olivia said, joining her at the stone balustrade. Vanessa startled. Mrs. Bennett? Yes, lovely night. Her hand unconsciously touched her right earring. Please, call me Olivia. She removed something from her clutch, the diamond teardrop catching the ambient light. I believe you lost this. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Where did you... Julian's car. 2 weeks ago. Olivia's voice remained conversational. Passenger seat. I've been waiting to return it to its rightful owner. Vanessa's composure crumbled. Olivia, I never intended to get caught or to sleep with my husband. Olivia placed the earring on the balustrade between them. How long? 4 months, Vanessa whispered, tears welling. He said you were separated, living together for appearances until after the Westbrook deal. Olivia's practiced calm wavered. Separated? We're trying for a baby. Vanessa's shocked expression confirmed what Olivia already knew. Julian had constructed elaborate lies for both women. He told me the marriage was over, Vanessa continued, that you'd grown apart years ago. While we were remodeling our kitchen and planning a trip to Barcelona, Olivia's voice rose slightly. A flash of recognition crossed Vanessa's face. Barcelona in September? He invited me to go with him. Said it was a surprise he'd been planning. Olivia felt suddenly lightheaded. The betrayal was more complete than she'd imagined. I need to sit down, she murmured. I'll leave the company, Vanessa said, wiping her tears. I never would have if I'd known. Don't make this about your nobility, Olivia cut in. Not when you've been sleeping with a married man. Just tell me everything, now. For 30 excruciating minutes, Vanessa detailed the affair. Weekends in Chicago when Julian claimed to be at conferences. Dinners charged to the corporate account. Promises of a future together once the Westbrook deal closed and he could finally break free from his loveless marriage. When Julian eventually found them, his face registered shock then fear as he saw the earring between them. Olivia, I can explain, he began. You already have, she replied coldly. To both of us, it seems. Different explanations, of course. Julian attempted damage control, ushering them to a private room off the main hall. For an hour, Olivia listened as his carefully constructed narrative disintegrated. He alternated between apologies, justifications, and pleas for understanding. It meant nothing, he insisted. 4 months of nothing, Olivia replied. Barcelona tickets for nothing. Telling her our marriage was over, was that nothing too? When Julian reached for her hand, she recoiled. Don't touch me. Not with hands that have been touching her. We can fix this, Julian said desperately. People make mistakes. Marriages survive affairs. This wasn't an affair, Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. This was a campaign of lies. To her, to me, to everyone. You created an entire fiction and expected us all to live in it. As she stood to leave, Julian grabbed her arm. Where are you going? Home? To pack? She pulled away. You can keep the Barcelona tickets. Take Vanessa. Or don't. I honestly don't care anymore. She turned to Vanessa, who stood pale and tear-stained against the wall. He's all yours now. But remember, a man who lies to his wife will lie to his mistress too. Walking through the gala to the exit, head high despite her crumbling interior, Olivia felt oddly weightless. The weeks of investigation, the careful cataloging of lies, it had prepared her for this moment of clarity amid devastation. By the time Julian rushed into their house 2 hours later, Olivia had packed essential items and arranged for a hotel room. The confrontation had ended. Now came the aftermath. The aftermath. The first week after the confrontation passed in a blur of logistics and legalities. Olivia moved into her sister Caroline's guest house, a small but elegant space overlooking Lake Washington that offered privacy and proximity to family support. Caroline, a divorce attorney with Seattle's top firm, had already connected Olivia with financial advisors and counselors. "He's been calling nonstop," Caroline reported, scrolling through Olivia's phone. 17 missed calls yesterday alone. Olivia continued folding sweaters into drawers, her movements methodical. "Has he contacted you professionally yet?" "No, but he will." Caroline's expression softened. "Are you absolutely certain about this? 12 years is a long time. 4 months of lies is longer." Olivia closed the drawer with finality. The text messages from Julian evolved, predictably from desperate apologies to angry accusations that she was overreacting to tearful declarations of undying love. Olivia read each one dispassionately, saving them as evidence while responding only to messages about practical matters. On day 9, Vanessa called. Olivia nearly declined but answered from curiosity. "I left the company," Vanessa said without preamble. "And Julian, I wanted you to know." "That's between you and him," Olivia replied coolly. "He's still wearing his wedding ring," Vanessa continued, talking about reconciliation. "I realized I was just collateral damage in whatever midlife crisis he's experiencing." Olivia felt a strange pang of sympathy. We both were. After 2 weeks of separation, Julian appeared at Caroline's door with flowers and rehearsed remorse. Olivia agreed to speak with him on the patio, maintaining physical distance as emotional protection. "I made a terrible mistake," Julian began, his voice breaking. "I got caught up in something that meant nothing compared to what we have." "Had," Olivia corrected. "Past tense." Julian knelt before her chair, a gesture that might have moved her weeks earlier. 12 years leave. Doesn't that count for something? People recover from affairs. We can go to counseling, rebuild trust. It wasn't just the affair," Olivia interrupted. "It was the elaborate deception. You constructed an entire alternate reality and expected me to live in the dark. I never meant to hurt you." "That's worse somehow." She stood, creating distance. "You didn't consider me enough to factor in my pain." Julian's contrition hardened into frustration. "So that's it? 12 years thrown away without even trying to fix things?" "You threw those years away," Olivia said quietly. "Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you planned a future with her using money from our joint accounts. Every time you told her our marriage was over while telling me we were trying for a baby." His face flushed. "It was complicated?" "No, it wasn't. Complicated is telling the truth and working through problems. What you did was simply selfish." The conversation circled for an hour before ending where it began, with Julian pleading for another chance and Olivia standing firm in her decision. As days became weeks, Olivia discovered strengths she hadn't known she possessed. She moved into her own apartment, filed for divorce with Caroline's guidance, and accepted a design project from an old client, work that had once been a hobby but now offered financial independence. The worst moments came unexpectedly. Finding Julian's favorite coffee mug in a box of kitchen items. Receiving mail addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. The well-meaning friends who suggested reconciliation as though infidelity were a minor transgression. "He made a mistake," insisted their mutual friend Thomas over lunch. "But he loves you." "Love doesn't lie for 4 months straight," Olivia replied. "And it certainly doesn't book romantic getaways with 2 different women." At night, alone in her new apartment, Olivia sometimes questioned her resolve. Divorce felt like admitting failure. The future stretched before her, unmarked and uncertain. On those nights, she reread Julian's text messages or reviewed the timeline she'd constructed, reminding herself that returning would mean accepting a fundamental broken trust. Halfway through the divorce proceedings, Julian made one final attempt at reconciliation. He appeared at her door one evening, sober and serious. "I've been in therapy," he said, "working through why I did what I did. I was feeling inadequate, trapped by expectations. Stop. Olivia held up her hand. My therapist says that understanding why someone hurt us doesn't obligate us to let them do it again. Julian's shoulders slumped. I still love you. I believe you, Olivia said gently. But love isn't enough. I need truth, trust, and respect. You damaged all three beyond repair. As she closed the door on Julian's defeated figure, Olivia realized she was closing a chapter of her life. The pain remained, but its edges had softened. The future that had once terrified her now beckoned with possibilities. A life rebuilt on her terms, without the constant anxiety of uncovering new betrayals. That night, she removed her wedding ring and placed it in the box with the diamond earring, artifacts from a relationship built on illusions that had finally shattered against the hard surface of truth. The renewal. 6 months after finding the earring, Olivia stood in the bright expanse of her new design studio, watching as workers installed the custom sign above the door. Bennett Interiors. She had kept her married name professionally, a pragmatic decision that acknowledged the reputation she'd built over years of freelance work. It looks perfect, Caroline said, joining her at the window. Dad would have been so proud. Their father, an architect who had encouraged Olivia's design talents from childhood, had left each daughter a modest inheritance. Caroline had used hers for law school. Olivia had saved hers, uncertain of its purpose until now, seed money for a business born from the ashes of her marriage. The divorce had finalized 3 months ago, with Julian eventually conceding to most of Olivia's terms. Whether from guilt or exhaustion, he'd stopped fighting once she'd discovered and documented his financial infidelities, investments made with their joint funds that he'd hidden, presumably for his post-divorce life with Vanessa. Have you heard from him? Caroline asked, arranging flowers on the reception desk. Olivia shook her head. Not since the final paperwork. Thomas mentioned he's taken a position with the Chicago office. With her? I didn't ask. Olivia adjusted a fabric sample on the display wall. It doesn't matter anymore. This was mostly true. The sharp pain of betrayal had gradually transformed into something duller, a background awareness rather than an acute wound. Her therapist called this progress. Olivia called it survival. The studio opening reception that evening brought together clients, friends, and family, a celebration of new beginnings that felt appropriate as spring bloomed across Seattle. Olivia moved through the crowd with newfound confidence, discussing design concepts and accepting congratulations. This space is magnificent, said Ethan Mercer, owner of the boutique hotel that had become her biggest client. The way you've balanced modern elements with warmth, it's exactly what I want for the hotel renovation. That's the Bennett signature, she replied, smiling. Contemporary doesn't have to mean cold. Later, as the gathering thinned, Olivia found herself alone on the small balcony overlooking the city. The unseasonably warm evening wrapped around her like a gentle embrace. Room for one more out here? She turned to find Marcus Chen, her commercial realtor, who had helped secure the studio space. Unlike many in her circle who had chosen sides or disappeared altogether after the divorce, Marcus had maintained a friendly professional distance that Olivia appreciated. Always, she replied, gesturing to the space beside her. Congratulations on the studio. He handed her a small gift bag. A studio warming present? Inside, Olivia found an antique brass compass, beautifully preserved. For new directions, Marcus explained. Though you seem to have found yours already. I'm trying, she admitted. Some days are better than others. That's how navigation works, he said simply. You adjust course as needed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and pink. 6 months ago, Olivia couldn't have imagined this moment, standing on her own balcony, celebrating her own business, feeling something like contentment despite everything that had been lost. The following morning, Olivia arrived early at the studio. On her desk sat a small package with no return address. Inside was a velvet box containing the diamond teardrop earring, the matching one to what she'd found in Julian's car. A note accompanied it. These belong to my grandmother. They should stay together. like they were meant to be. I wish things had been different. V. Olivia considered the symbolism. Two earrings separated and now reunited. But unlike the jewelry, some things once broken couldn't be made whole again. She placed both earrings in an envelope and addressed it to a women's shelter that helped survivors rebuild after leaving abusive relationships. These diamonds would fund someone else's fresh start. That afternoon, her first official client meeting at the new studio was with a woman recently divorced after 20 years of marriage. "I don't know what I want," the woman confessed. "The house feels like a museum of mistakes now." Olivia smiled with genuine understanding. "Then we'll create something new. Something that reflects who you are now, not who you were in a relationship that no longer serves you." "Is that possible?" The woman's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "To start over at 52? I started over at 38, Olivia replied. "It's not about age. It's about deciding your own story doesn't end just because one chapter did." Later, walking home through the gentle spring evening, Olivia realized the truth in her own words. The betrayal had changed her but hadn't defined her. The earring that had shattered her illusions had also, ironically, freed her from them. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Design committee meeting tomorrow at 9. Coffee before?" Olivia smiled and texted back a simple yes. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time since that afternoon in Julian's car, uncertainty felt like possibility rather than fear. She had survived the discovery, the investigation, the confrontation, and the aftermath. Now came the renewal, a life redesigned according to her own blueprint, where trust was earned, not assumed, and where her worth wasn't determined by someone else's fidelity. The diamond earring had revealed a painful truth, but in that revelation, Olivia had discovered something more valuable than any jewel, the strength to build a life that needed no one else's validation to sparkle.